Hi everyone, you may be joining us twice today, which is awesome. This is our usual Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Noor Kyle.
And I'm the other one of your two hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
So thank you for being here, whether you're here often, every once in a while, you've never been here before. We're very excited to have all of you here. And those of you who are watching on YouTube, thank you for joining us as well. So, of course, you can support the work that we do here if that seems like something you'd like to do by subscribing to our channel, of course. You can like this video, which means a lot. You can comment and ask a question or offer your thoughts, or you can respond to other people's comments. We're trying to get the community engaged with one another as well. And of course, be courteous with one another.
Yeah, your
Um,
comment will never be seen and you'll end up getting banned from the channel and stuff like that. So you don't want to go there. We don't want you to go there.
Yes. So keep that in mind, but of course, we do welcome your thoughts. And what else? You can
Um,
share our stuff if you like. That's always helpful too.
yeah, definitely liking our videos is very important. It's usually only 1 out of every 10 people likes our videos, and I'm pretty sure the other 9 don't hate us. So yeah, consider that. Also, we are still collecting spare change from under the couch cushion. So if you happen to find any, or in your car, if you look down on the sides of the seat of your car, you might find some. And if you do, and you don't need it for anything else, you could send it to us. There's links in the description for our coffee account and our um, PayPal
PayPal.
account. And this is what keeps this channel going. We don't make hardly anything off of ad revenues, even though ad revenues are forced upon us because we keep it to a bare minimum. We don't give any space in the middle of our videos to spam you with ads, which is as good as we can do for the most part. But um, yeah, so we rely upon uh, your generosity in order to keep functioning. So
Yep.
spare change, man. Under the couch cushions. Take a look.
Change, change. I don't know if any of you remember that episode of South Park, but it always comes to mind when someone says the words change. All right. Anyways, uh yeah, we also do one-on-ones. If that's something that interests you, you can send us an email or hit us up on Facebook and ask us about one-on-one or two-on-one coaching if you want both of us to chat with you. So, let's hunker down, shall we? This is
All right.
kind of our theme for today is sort of, Sufism as influenced by the exchange of ideas and philosophies and mingling of spiritual people, all of that stuff along the Silk Road. And earlier this morning, we were talking about the kind of intermingling that happened in three particular cities along the middle of the Silk Road. So that's like Central Asia. And tonight, we're going to be talking more about, in story form, we're going to be discussing the exchange of ideas between Sufism and Taoism.
Yeah, we're going from the generalized this morning, looking at the influence of the interconnection between the various spiritual paths that all met up along the Silk Road. And tonight we're going to look at a specific incident, hence the name, the Dervish and the Dao.
Yes, so earlier, Sufism and the Silk Road. Now we invite you to join us for the tale of the Dervish and the Dao.
Yeah. Is that the cue?
Yes, it's a very polite, subtle cue.
I was just going to sit here and stare at you.
I got all the notes. You tell us the tale.
Okay, so it goes like this. Long time ago, in the city of Bukhara, a sheikh sent one of his students to China with the task of finding one particular incredibly rare herb. And the thing is that the herb itself was not rare. One could find the plant in the marketplaces, but there is one preparation of the herb that is very rare, and very few people know how to do it, and all of them live very far away. So if you wanted this herb, you had to go all the way to China to get it, because it oftentimes did not travel along the Silk Road as a commodity. So the dervish, whose name was Hakim, lived in Bukhara, and so he went down to the Caravansary, which is just outside the city, and he looked for caravans that were heading towards China. And he found some that were going partway because it the caravans almost never went the whole way. The whole way was from like Istanbul to Beijing. That's a long way for a caravan. So they staged from caravanserai to caravanserai, from town to town. They would unload their goods in one town and leave them to be picked up by the next caravan while they went back to pick up more stuff. And that way, no one group spent their entire lifetime trying to travel the length of the Silk Road, which was long and arduous and dangerous. It was like what, over 3,000 miles at no faster than the speed of a walking camel, which is pretty slow. Camels being slightly lazy, they like to walk slow. And so he found a caravan that got him probably 300 miles down. He rode with the rest of the people, walked a lot because he didn't have a horse, and sometimes he could sit on a wagon, sometimes not. Um, and he got to a caravanserai. They unloaded their goods and they left, leaving him there. Hakim decided that rather than wait for maybe a month for the next caravan to show up that was going in his direction, he would walk to the next point. And so he did. It was a long walk. It was probably 100 miles to the next stop. And interestingly, at one point he decided to go off the road and go up and have his lunch, which was packed away. So here he is, he's got his walking stick, he's going up there, he sits down, and as he's eating, he notices that there is a man walking, at least he assumes it's a man, wearing black robes and walking in the same direction as him, and goes past him. And a ways down the road, people jump out. They go, ah! And it's bandits. There's three of them. And it's obvious that they're going to rob the man. Two of them have clubs. One of them has a knife. They're all threatening him. The man seems like he's not particularly perturbed by this. Hakim begins to quietly creep closer to see if he can lend a hand. And at a certain point, the bandits attack this man. Now, you would expect there to be a fight, but there wasn't exactly a fight. The black robe man moved in such a way that one bandit fell, kind of tripped over his foot. Another one stabbed the first guy with his own knife. It was very clumsy. And the man in the black robe just moved. almost like he was dancing. About this time, we discovered that there's a fourth man who sits up out of the bushes, and he has a bow with an arrow nocked in it. And he begins to draw and aim at the man in black. But as it happens, Hakim is right behind him. So Hakim takes his walking stick and thumps this man soundly on the top of his head, knocking him unconscious. By this time, the fight, such as it was completely over with the three bandits lying on the ground and the man in black just standing there looking at them with a kind of grin on his face. Hakim comes down and waves and says, "I'm not with them." And he looks at the man, and the man looks very Asian. So he's hoping that they have a language in common. And as it turns out, the man speaks Turkish, which is Hakim's language, because as he finds out later, he is from originally from what is known as Chinese Turkestan. So it's his mother tongue. The man introduces himself as Zhuangzi and says that he is traveling back to the monastery where he studies, which is far away in China. And Hakim says, I'm going that way too. Maybe we can share the road for a way. And I want to find out how these men managed to fall down. And it didn't look like you were hitting them or anything. And Zhuangzi says, well, I did nothing, but let's walk. So they continue on their way. After rifling the bandits' packs and relieving them of all of the money that they had and whatever food, which Zhuangzi then, when they came to a small village, gave away to the poorest people in the village. They stayed in that village overnight and they talked. And Zhuangzi explained that he was a disciple of a particular teacher who lived in the mountains in China, and he followed a way that he called Dao. Hakim allowed that he had never heard of this before, but he would like to know about it. And Hakim said, I am a dervish, and this is my teacher back there. And they decided to be traveling companions and every day to share something of the teachings that they had with each other. The next morning, Hakim wakes up and his new friend is not around, and he looks around and he sees him just at the edge of town doing this strange, incredibly slow movement. And he watches for a while as he goes through these different steps that look almost like a dance. Doesn't look like anything particularly violent. Hakim has seen warriors practice with their swords and wrestle and all of that, and this doesn't look like any of that. And so after he's done, Hakim is making tea at their fire, and he asks him about it. He said, this is something that my teacher developed to help us. My teacher, whose name is Zhang Sun Feng, was a wandering mendicant for many years. And he finally came to rest at this mountaintop. And many of us came to study with him. And he's been teaching there for many, many years. And he said, when we were first sitting with him, he noticed that we couldn't sit still. Our meditation was weak. And even when our meditation became strong in the sitting, the moment we got up, we lost it. So he developed this method that taught us to be still in the sitting, and then still in the moving, and then still in everything we did. And this practice, this dance that we do, is our main method of training for that. And it's also just happens to be a way that if we need to, we can practice this meditation in such a way that a clumsy bandit will fall and hurt himself. So they travel on. And Hakim says, please tell me some teaching from this. And they agree that today, Fengzi will give him a saying from his book. And tomorrow, Hakim will do the same. And they will trade and then they will discuss. So Fengzi says, the perfect man forgets both self and things and wanders on without aim. Hakim thought, that's interesting. It almost sounds familiar. Let me think about this. That night, when they were camping, and they were still on foot, and they were still walking because they had not found a caravan going in their direction yet. That evening, Zhuangzi began to teach Hakim his strange, slow dance. And Hakim began to teach Fengji their traditional practice of breath. And as they were eating, Fengji said, what did you make of that aphorism? And Hakim said, the perfect man, the insan ikamo. We also translate it as the complete man. He forgets in the sense that his self passes away from him and things pass away from him. The self and the things are both there, but they're no longer his. And the wandering without aim is an apparency because the aim is now guided by the one rather than by the ego. Fengji smiles, says, good. The next morning, as they were preparing to leave, Hakim says to him, here is a line. I searched for God and found him in my heart. I searched for my heart and found it in all things. And they traveled on. That night, Fengji said, what you call God, we call Dao. And the Dao is the core of all things. So if you find the Tao in your heart, you find your heart in all things, because the Tao permeates the all. And Hakim allowed us, this was a very good understanding. The next morning, they practiced this slow dance some more. And they come to take off. They find a caravan, just happens to be leaving, going in the right direction. So they join up with it, and they travel with it for many weeks, sharing these aphorisms. The next one they share is, the man who awakens to the Tao sees the universe as his home and all creation as his family. To which Hakim replied with, the universe is a single drop of rain. Do not consider yourself as something separate. They discussed these two long into the night. And again, they traveled on. And this went on for days and weeks, and every day before the caravan left, they would practice more and more of this slow dance until Hakim had learned the entire sequence of it from beginning to end. And he noticed that, in fact, it did allow him to move with more silence in his mind and heart. So he practiced it because he felt that it was good. One night, they sat around the fire, and Hakim said, "Today I am going to give you a surah from the Quran, and tomorrow I would like you to teach me the meaning of it." And he gave him Surah Ikhlas, the Surah of the Unity. Say, He, God, is one, self-subsistent. He is neither born nor does he give birth to. He is one. And the next morning, Zhuangzi said, I think I have an understanding. These words are very, very powerful. From the Daoist view, this surah transcends the rigidities of monotheism, aligning with the concept that we call wuji, the boundless void from which all creation emerges. I think that that is the ahad that is referred to here. The verse, Qul huwa Allahu ahad, say He, Allah is one, emphasizes the non-duality of existence, mirroring our understanding of the Tao as encompassing both yin and yang, the light and the dark, the perfect harmony, the rejection of attributing children or partners to Allah resonates with our notion of letting go of desires and attachments, recognizing the inherent wholeness of the universe. The idea that the one is neither gives birth nor is born echoes our concept of wu wei, effortless action. The divine doesn't exert force or control, but allows creation to unfold naturally, like the Tao giving rise to the myriad forms without imposing its will. Similarly, we emphasize that achieving goals through attunement with and in harmony with the one rather than forceful striving. Hakim marveled at this because he thought that it was one of the most interesting expositions on Surah Al-Halas that he had ever heard. And they traveled on. They talked about what Hakim was doing, and Hakim explained that he was working to find this incredibly rare version of this herb. It was called the ruby root in the way that it was known at that time. And as I said, the plant itself was not rare, but the root of the plant was white. and just plain, and you could dry it, and it had medicinal properties. But coming from a certain place, it was treated in some way that made the root turn translucent and red like amber. And that was the quality of the herb that was needed back in Bukhara. And Zhuangzi said, as it happens, that herb is prepared at my monastery. So if you'd like, I will take you there and we'll see if you can buy some from the source rather than having to go all the way to the end of uh, the road and bargain for it in the market. Hakims thought that this was a great idea. So they came to a point where the Silk Road split, going north to Beijing and south to the port cities. And they turned off and went into the mountains. They climbed high into the mountains, and there on the top of one mountain was a beautiful set of buildings. They went up. Zhuangzi introduced his traveling companion Hakim and explained how they had met on the road and what they had been doing. And everybody thought that this was groovy. And they invited him to stay for as long as he would like. And they said, the next batch of the ruby root will be ready in 3 months. So you must stay at least that long. And he agreed. Every morning he watched, and then he joined in with all of the members of this monastery as they went through this slow, stately dance. And they practiced meditation together, sitting and walking. They would walk in circles as part of their meditation. They would sit as part of their meditation. And they worked, as one does in monasteries everywhere. And after about 2 weeks there, Hakim was invited to meet the teacher. He was escorted into the heart of the monastery, and there sat a very old man. But he was radiant with energy. They sat together, and the old man said, the way, the Tao is one. All of our descriptions of it cannot describe it. All of our words do not encompass it. Every one of us, all of your people, all of my people, all of the other people, follow the Tao whether they know it or not. Forms are meaningless. Essence is everything. And I welcome you to find the essence of our teaching and take it back with you. If you find something useful, share it. If what you find is not useful in your path, leave it behind. Somebody will find it and pick it up. And that's what Hakim did. After staying for months, he finally got the ruby root, which it turns out starts out as this plain root. And they steam it, and they add herbs to the steam, and they treat it in different ways. And finally, when it's dried, it's this beautiful translucent amber and contains massive healing properties. And you got a goodly amount of it. And then he went back down and caught a caravan going back to Bukhara, had many adventures on the way back, practiced his slow dance, thought about what it was teaching him, realized that the form of the dance didn't mean anything, but the essence of the dance could be found in any form of movement. He went back and he gave the herbs to his teacher, who was very grateful because those herbs cured an illness that his teacher had that he wasn't talking about. And Hakim went on to be a great teacher in his own right over the years, and passed on all of the things that he had learned as part of the work of the tariqah. He didn't need to call anything the Tao because he already had al-Haq, which he realized was synonymous. And to this day, that particular lineage practices movement as a way of maintaining one's meditation in the world. So that's our story of Hakim and his journey to China. What do you think? Does it mean anything? Or everybody's asleep?
It means no thing at all.
Yes, it does mean that. Don't
Yeah.
everybody talk at once.
Yeah, I was thinking of saying that it demonstrates that there are different ways that use different language, but ultimately it's the same reality underneath, and the language doesn't really matter.
Yes, that's exactly true. If you perceive the reality, you speak about it in the words that you have. But those are just words. It's like, the Tao Te Ching starts out with, the Tao that can be spoken of is not the real Tao. So there is essence and there's form. And the essence is what matters.
Yeah, there's actually a quote from the Rasha that I can pull in.
Yeah, lay it on us.
Yes, so this is from Jami, Master Jami. And it said, when asked why he seldom adhered to the technical terms and topics of Sufism, he responded by saying, that would be all very well if we merely wished to deceive one another, turning a subject of real importance into a verbal plaything. The real meaning of Sufism is not expressed in speech. Nevertheless, in order to understand each other's method, two masters of the heart must join in conversation.
Damn right.
Yeah, so words offer a way to point to.
Yeah.
And that is the purpose that they serve. What's that?
Or to confuse you.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there is something about both Taoism and Sufism where that being confounded is part of the teaching as well.
Yes. Now, here's the cool thing. This was only possible because of the knowledge that traveled up and down the Silk Roads. And it traveled not just from China to Turkey, but also from the southern tip of India all the way up to the Silk Road, from the Arabian Peninsula up, from Africa up to the Silk Road. All of these lines of knowledge came and were shared. And then the Silk Road disappeared. It was no longer possible to do that, in part because of the Mongol invasions and subsequent invasions after that, the destructions of cities. Merv, which was the largest city in the world at its time, was reduced to ruins and finally never rebuilt. Millions of people were slaughtered. But the Silk Road never goes away. We are, in a sense, on the new Silk Road right now, this very instant, because if you think about it, we have people in India, in North Africa, in Australia. We have people from all over the world sharing these ideas with each other. And this is maybe the first time that this has been able to happen this way since the original Silk Road fell apart. So yes, the internet could be the new Silk Road, and not in the sense that got everybody into trouble at one time.
On the dark web, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's even more inclusive than it was then, because we get to have not only men present, but women as well, and
Yeah.
still others. So
If there ain't no women's, what fun is it?
yes.
That's what I say.
And that's one thing we notice in these old texts a lot is, it's men talking to each other.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of the poet Kabir, who was invited to this great gathering of poets and mystics. And he looked around and he saw that there was all men. And he said to them, "Where is Mirabai?" And they looked at each other like, well, we didn't invite her. She's a woman. And he sat down and he said, "I will not speak to you until Mirabai is brought here." Mirabai, of course, is this great poet of the, she was a devotee of Krishna. And so he sat there for 3 days without uttering a word until they could find Mirabai and invite her to come. And she came and he had her talk for the first 3 hours and read her poetry. And they all agreed that they were idiots
For not having had her
for
there.
not having had her in the first place.
Mm.
I don't know if the story is true, but if it isn't, it should have been.
Yeah, I haven't heard any stories about Mirabai for many, many years. But I have heard stories about her in the past, but I never heard that story about Kabir.
Yeah.
And I've heard a fair bit about Kabir.
Yep. Well, I read it in a book somewhere. Like I said, I don't know if it's true or not, but if it isn't, it should be.
Well, it's like the internet. If it's in a book, it has to be true, right?
Yeah, I say it's true on a higher level.
I have no doubt.
Yeah. And it might be true in reality. We don't know. Trying to think of who wrote that book. It may come back to me.
Yeah, I'll make a note, and if it comes back,
Yeah.
I'm curious. Oh, Nancy, yes.
Yes, Nancy.
Just one thing I noticed about the story is that, yeah, there's all this thing about how everything is one, but on the other hand, there's this root, and you need this one particular root. It's like everything is one, but different parts of the universe are doing different things.
Actually, it would be everything is one and different parts of the universe are doing different things at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
So the expression of the Tao that is this root is what they needed. That would be my
Mm-hmm.
take on it. Or maybe
Mm-hmm.
they didn't need the
Yeah,
root.
and
Maybe the root was just a pretense to get him going down the road.
mm-hmm.
I know my teacher has done that to me more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Go do this as a pretense to actually learning something. I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing is just a sort of an echoey feeling that the root might be a metaphor for the improvement of the individual soul.
And that's a very good point. Yeah. And one has to realize that this story has enough holes in it that it could be used as a sieve. That's
Mhm.
okay.
It's an illustrative sketch.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And probably no part of it is actually true. And yet, it's probably completely true. There
Well,
we go with that paradox again.
as Halil says in the chat, the highest truths are rarely factual.
There you go.
So does thank you, Nancy. Does anybody have any questions? We could go from there too.
Yeah. Or answers. Totally
Chris.
down with the answers. Yes, Chris.
What was the equivalent of the Wuji in the story? I didn't catch that part.
The ahad.
The ahad, and I'm not familiar with the term
That
ahad.
means the one.
Hmm.
Kol hu Allahu ahad. Say, the divine reality is unitary, is one. So ahad. It's one of the divine names.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I remember you talked a little bit about this this morning, and one of the things that I was wondering about at the time was you mentioned that Allah has become like a name of God that can be spoken, but there's also a lot of tradition that that the true name of God cannot be spoken. And I wondered, it sounded as though it was maybe somehow related to that.
It could be. And yes, whatever the name of the divine reality is, assuming that there is a name, would not be something that could be verbalized. Allah is the name that contains all attributes. It's the attribute of all attributes. It's often misused, though, and thought of as the grumpy old man in the sky.
Because it
And
does translate to the God, and a lot of
yes,
people have connotations around the word God that have to do with it being a personified entity
Right.
with hands, legs, all that stuff.
yep. And male genitals. Don't forget, God has male genitals.
Did you have more you wanted to say, Ian?
No, it was just something that had occurred to me this morning that I wanted to kind of
Yeah.
just clarify, and it seemed like a good opportunity.
Yeah. And there is a name of God that is the name that encompasses the essence of God as opposed to the attributes. And we'll talk about that sometime, but not tonight.
Okay. That's interesting, though.
Yeah.
I think that was for me on a personal experience, um, being introduced to these different names, having grown up in a Muslim community, was really helpful because, like you said, Mushtaq, there's this conditioning and this already impression of an image of what the word Allah is, right? Because being conditioned in a culture, in you know, from religion, from school, from you know, parents, all of that, and then to go into you know, circles of Sufism or books in Sufism, and then hear or read the word Allah, it's like, wait a second, I already have this kind of image, this conditioning, so it's very hard to relate. However, being introduced to a different name, even though the name itself is not the named, it allowed for slowly the image and the conditioning to start to being stripped away, so that a new relationship is now being formed with the divine, rather than with the image of this old grumpy man up in the sky.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we want.
Yeah. So that's that. Yeah, that's been helpful. And the, you know, I guess tying that to the story, how does, I guess this is more of a question. Is there an escape from the isms, right? When things become Sufism, Daoism, is there a way around that, or is that just
There is a way around that for individuals. That is almost inevitable for religions. If you get a bunch of people together, especially if they have lost their living teacher, they create an ism around what it is that they're doing. We see that today with the ism around Sufism, the ism around Gurdjieffism, Fourth Wayism, all of these other isms that we have. Isms and anities. And that is the death of truth. And at the same time, for individuals, for each and every one of us who can work on this path, there is the reality rather than the ism. You just have to remember that those are two different things.
right? Yeah, like for me, it seems that at times I would want to get away from the ism, right? It's like, I'm gonna,
Yes.
you know, do my thing. However, the, you know, being on this lonely path, or being naive enough to think that I can do it by myself, right? So it's like I'm trying to find the balance of not being stuck in the ism, even if it's Sufism, even if, or esoteric, you know, kind of a deeper, more meaning-oriented way, but trying not to be stuck even in that itself, right? So I'm trying to find the balance in not trying to be you know, thinking that, oh, I'm by myself, I can do it, without having a community, without having a teacher or whatnot. So this has been really helpful.
Yeah. And it is possible to have a teacher without having an ism. It's not easy, but it's possible.
Thanks, Osama.
Khalil had something to say here.
Yes. Halil was, when you were talking about isms, he said, non-dualism is the most offensive, at least to me.
Yeah, I could see that. Not twoism.
Chris, you have a thought?
I just like in the story how when it started getting into the people talking about their path, that it was focused on so they could understand each other's methods. So that grounds it in practice, right? And I've heard someone say once that like religion is the stuff you talk about, and spirituality is the stuff you don't talk about. So it's just kind of like a interesting to kind of play with that tension.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me how there is this common thread between these two traditions of encouraging not a mental checking out, but a kind of shutting down of all those insistences inside of us that everything fit together in a certain way, in a very logical, material, graspable sense. But really, what both we could say the approach of thinking about the Tao and the approach of thinking about or engaging with, I should say, al-haq, the truth, reality, is that it goes beyond words, it goes beyond concepts. It really pushes you to sit with that, both literally and figuratively, and make peace with that. And then bring that peace into everyday living. Because not everything, well, the absolute does not fit in a box. That's, we can just take that as given that the ineffable, the indescribable does not fit in a box. So why do we keep squirming and trying to fit it into that box?
So comfortable.
It can be.
It's safe when it's in a box.
Yeah.
Boxes are not for the truth. Boxes are for cats. What else came up for people? Nancy.
You were talking about the temptations of intellectualizing,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I was thinking about how these are two emotionally very different um approaches, except that they just sort of didn't talk about it in ways that brought up the emotional differences. I mean, in Sufism, it's a personal relationship. You know, there's the love between God and the person, and eventually I think they dissolve into each other.
Yeah, it's
Um
not
and it's
actually a personal
rather,
relationship, though.
oh, okay.
Yeah, because if there's a person, then there is two,
Hmm.
God and the person. And therein lies failure. The goal of of the Sufi is for there to be one. And so, as we talked about earlier today, you have to give up the illusion of self in a certain way and realized the oneness of everything, which is very close to Taoist ideas.
It is, but there's this poetry along the way about drunken ecstasy
Yeah, there is
and
all of
seeking the beloved.
there is all of that.
And I think Taoism starts with impersonal forces, which might have its own problems.
Yeah, but they, to me anyway, they all resolve into the same thing. When they're talking about the lover and beloved, they aren't talking about like personal love. You know, there's the old story about I came to the door of the beloved and I knocked, and my beloved said, "Who is it?" And I said, "It is I." And she said, "Go away, because you are not truly a lover." I went away, and after many years I returned and I knocked, and my beloved said, "Who is it?" And I said, "It is you." And she said, "Enter." So you have that.
Okay.
But I'm not saying you're wrong about any of this. I
Mhm.
experience it from a slightly different perspective. But your perspective is as valid as anybody else's,
Well, you do
except for
have more experience with it than I do.
yeah. Nor has
Yeah,
the
just in,
real perspective on this. So we should both shut up and listen to her.
Well, I mean, I was going to add that the cultural trappings are kind of par for the course too.
Yeah.
So, we have certain artistic traditions or philosophical traditions and linguistic, poetic traditions, all of that stuff. Those are going to contribute to how we express the essentially inexpressible. And there's nothing we can do to get around that. But the idea is that we have this capacity to develop an understanding that goes beyond words as a result of experiencing rather than conceptualizing. And in my opinion, that's what happens when someone like Hakim meets someone like Fangzhe on the road. Like, if they can find a way to articulate to the point where they recognize in each other, oh, I feel that you've had the same experience that I've had, that I don't know how to convey in words, but have certainly felt. And you mirror that in each other. That conveys more than words can.
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, we're groping the same elephant.
I think it was remarkably fortunate that Fang Ji happened to speak Turkish because he grew up in Chinese Turkmenistan.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
There
Not that
are no
far-fetched.
odds for that.
Yeah.
But if he only spoke Chinese, there might not have been a story.
Of course.
There might not have been a story, but again, I think even with nonverbal language, you can find a way to recognize certain qualities in each other.
Yep.
But it wouldn't have been as much of a story. Yeah. More challenging to tell, yes. Chris.
Is there anything you could say about the origin story of Taoism? Because like within my understanding, it's like some guy named Lao Tzu comes out of nowhere and has all these teachings, and he may or may not have existed, but like it
Well,
seems like
that's
he also came on the scene like when a bunch of people were finally writing stuff down. So it just kind of lends itself to be like there must have been something going on for some time before that.
yeah. Lao Tzu is not the originator of Taoism, or I mean, if Lao Tzu was real, I mean, the name means old man. Zhuangzi means young man. Um, so who
So it's
knows
like
about
the
it?
sage, basically, like the
Yeah,
old wise
it's like
sage.
the old wise person.
Yeah, it's like
But
old master or old boy, basically.
yeah, and
That's what Lao Tzu means.
Taoism, or the practice of the Tao, rather than putting the ism on it, probably is one of the oldest practices anywhere. Probably goes back to the first shamanic experiences of Central Asia and China. What were called the Great Spirit religions, where you had this direct experience of the vastness of the now. And that could go back 100,000 years or more. And that is most likely the origin of Daoist thought. Yes, Brad.
I'd heard that Lao Tzu, which means old man, as he said, could have been a collection of several people from,
Very, very well possible. Yeah.
and just as William Shakespeare it's thought that he could be a collection of writers under one person, that they were able to put that forth in that way,
Yeah.
which would make sense. Yeah, that's all.
The
Yeah.
debate is
And
hot.
that's a distinct possibility. That there is a distinct possibility that Lao Tzu was not a specific living individual, but is somehow a conglomerate, or somebody who was used as a mouthpiece for these ideas. We don't know. We weren't there. We weren't at the border guard station where the guy made him write this stuff down. But the document exists and it's interesting. Somebody came up with these ideas, or maybe a lot of somebody came up with them. So who have we not heard from?
Levita.
Oh, poor Levita.
Shri, how about you?
Here I was trying to blend in. Well, what struck me was these were two gentlemen that actually stayed curious and open in their relationship to each other, just talking to each other. And that is actually a powerful thing for me. I was brought up in a religion that blocked everybody who was different, everybody outside of their particular dogma, and everybody was dangerous. So you can't be open to learning from someone else if you can only see there's only one source. And so becoming a young adult and finding my own way and finding this group of people here to be able to listen to all different aspects. I like how you bring forth these stories that don't shut off anybody else. And that's the unifying thing that I find really quite special, because there's wisdom in all of it. And it is coming back to that one source in the end. There's nothing separates us. There's nothing separating us from God. So I really like how this is unifying. And teaching me to be more prepared to see a different perspective in lots of different things. And it could be everyday life, it could be a spiritual practice. And it's feeling that connection, truly feeling that connection means that there's value in every person that I'm meeting, conversing with, exchanging ideas with. When I'm teaching my own people, movement work and so forth, it's where we're suspending judgment in a way that is demeaning. So a lot of people tell me they hate their thighs, or they hate their butts, or they hate their posture, or blah, blah, blah. So what are you going to do about it? You know, and actually, why don't we work with that as a place of beginning and a place of feeling? And thank goodness we've got this body to actually get us around from here to there and be able to experience nice food and being able to make friends with ourselves as well as with other people. It's all part of this. And so I like the story of these two people, entirely different upbringing, and bringing that wisdom into our consciousness. Am I mistaken?
No,
No, not at all. Exactly right.
and you bring up a very important point that we had not touched on. If there is no body, there is no ice cream.
No ice cream. Coffee gelati is my favorite. So if anybody's in town, I'm prepared to go out for coffee gelati at Messina. It was just beautiful. But yeah, but there's just all those different things. So even like sharing that slowness and that actually recognizing how does that feel, and seeing how you can actually be so observant that you can upset someone's balance by not actually overextending yourself, because I've always liked that understanding of Tai Chi and movement. And I think, yeah, it goes with everything else. If we could be more open and more observant, you see so much more to a situation, and actually not see the bad side. We're so quick to look for the bad side of things. You know, that person is a terrorist. You know, I mean, that's the main thing. It doesn't matter where you come from. The other person is a bad person. No?
So much in there. I agree. 100%. Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Shri. And I think that ties in a lot of what we were sharing about this morning with this idea that there is absolutely benefit in being able to have this blending of ideas and collaborating with one another, and seeing that there is good in every path, every person, every object, every concept. You know, there's something about this in both Sufism and Taoism, where unity is in multiplicity, multiplicity is in unity. And although we may have a sense on the subjective level of good, bad, liking, disliking, everything is a manifestation of the absolute. So there's a fundamental, we could say, goodness, quote unquote, to it. You can't cut off one part from the whole. It is all part of the whole. And it is meant to be that way. So if we can hold that spirit when we engage with one another, even the people who offend us, we can see that they serve a purpose, even in their being offensive. Halil says, thank God I have this body. It's just about the holiest prayer one can utter. And that was in response to what you were saying, Shri, about embracing the body as a friend as opposed to finding what we can critique about it and wanting to change it as opposed to working together with the body. So I
And-
appreciate your thoughts.
And Nora, you just mentioned, in dealing with people that offend you, in the Tao Te Ching, it also says that the bad man is the material that the good man works on. And that always kind of resonated as, like kind of Gurdjieffian for me.
Yeah. Especially when they're the same man.
Right. And then there's another thing too about the Tao is when like do that in which consists in taking no action and order will prevail. I think if, especially growing up in like a very busy household where it's always like doing, just the idea of not doing and letting things fall into places can be super powerful for people.
Yeah. That whole concept of Wu Wei, which I tend to translate as effortless action or action without effort or something along those lines, is one of the incredibly powerful concepts of Taoism that the rest of us could benefit a little bit from. I mean, effortless action leads to flow. Flow leads to the silencing of the ego. Flow leads to mastery. What could be better?
Yep.
Uncontrived action is good too.
That's James' offering.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
Osama.
Yeah, something just clicked. This morning we talked about the four, wait, what were there? The 4 steps of
Yes.
annihilation, kind of, in
Yeah.
a way.
Yeah, 4 stages,
The-
4 steps. Yeah.
Right. The Fanat fil Af'al, which is the second one. There might be a connection with effortless
Yes.
action with that one. That's yeah.
There
I just
is.
wanted to point that out because it just clicked in some
And
type
now
of weird way.
everybody is going to have to go and watch that first video. Oh, darn.
Yep.
No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, we are not experts in Taoism by any means, but I know that I've benefited from this exploration in seeing, from the perspective of Ibn Arabi's way of outlining Sufism. It has so much in common with Taoism as outlined by Zhuangzi and Lao Tzu, that it's almost uncanny until you realize that, again, when it comes to experiencing and tasting the real and experiencing inner transformation, of course there's going to be similarities. Of course there's going to be confluences and echoes of one another and incredible overlaps, because it's what works. It's what fits together. So it's definitely worth, I think, as it was put earlier, I don't know if Bushtalk and I were talking about it or someone else, but it's kind of like, it's not about, I mean, for me personally, replacing Sufism with Daoist study so much as viewing it all as part of the whole. It all supports the rest.
Yeah, none of this is to suggest that one needs to go to a different path than what one is on. It's more along the lines of, for me, Taoist thought is a tool to understand what my sheikh taught me over the last 50 years. So just another tool. And that goes, you know, the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, travel even unto China for knowledge. And so we did this weekend.
Yes. Yeah, as Khalil says, expert in Taoism is an egregious oxymoron. Exactly. I mean, that's the kind of attitude one needs to unpack. Khalil says again, the Tao is a broken man seeing himself in a broken mirror for the first time. Is that a quote, Khalil? Or your own?
It's a spontaneous haiku.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
One of the things I find about looking at different traditions and so on is that for me, they're kind of a little way of testing the edges of what I believe, particularly where there might be incongruities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people were saying that earlier too, like to take a look at another's perspective kind of helps shake us up and be less numb about the things that we've come to accept as true. And that's important. Because, you know, we're all about, we try to be about challenging things that we assume as true, beliefs, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And when it comes to Tao, to Daoist thought or whatever, and I don't like to use the term the Tao because that adding the to the end kind of thingifies Tao.
Objectifies.
Or to use it without the, you just call it Tao.
Mm.
Personal preference to keep me in line. And the important thing to me is Tao reminds me that the divine reality is not personal, and it's not anthropomorphic, and it is not a mean old man. And to hold that latter view is the death of truth, in my estimation. And Quran was pretty clear about this. And it was not until you started getting lawyers involved that you had to always think of Allah as some guy, or not think of Allah as some guy, or any of these other rules that they come up with. So I don't know how many more heresies I can commit tonight, but I'm going to try and get at least one more in.
Go team.
Yeah, I can see people gathering out in the street with stakes and pitchforks and torches and sigh.
Who have we not heard from? I think we have heard from Raphael. Tatang, have we had the opportunity to hear from you? Would you like to chime in? Who did we lose? Oh well. Hi there.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. Uh, the story relates to my work in the school. So, for example, there are so many problems in school life. Recently, we have an issue from parents, for example, or from children. So everyday teachers want something to happen. And I don't know how to help the teachers, but I read to this story something like if we learn how to deal with work, doing inner work, so probably we can see the problem not as the problem, but as the potential. And for example, last few weeks, as the issue from parents, something like complaining the school, etc., or how the teachers have the conversation with the parents. So I think it is not easy for teachers to have a dialogue with the parent. So in preparing teachers to have a good relationship with parents, my principle as teachers to do two things, I think, and it relates to, I don't know, but we practice I think
You're starting to break up a bunch, so I don't know if anybody else is hearing you clearly, but your words are breaking up on this end.
Yeah.
yeah, I know, because it's raining here, so I try to pause my video.
There you
Oh,
go.
that
Is it
helps. Yes.
better?
So you were saying,
It's better, okay.
yeah, in conversations between, preparing teachers to talk to parents, you were saying,
That we as a school people, we have to prepare ourselves, and my fellow principal ask the teachers or engage the teachers something like breathing practice and movement practice. So we don't know if this can help or become the solutions, but we just consider that probably this is the first step.
I think that that's actually quite brilliant. What kind of movement are you teaching your teachers?
Something like sensing the movement, observing the body while practicing the breath. So something like move your hand or your left hand and observe what's happening in your hand, and then take a breath, and then yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, that's hard. Having been a teacher myself, I know that oftentimes parents don't want to hear the truth, and they'll get up.
Yeah.
and then that makes it hard to work with them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Mhm.
So there's an old Sufi saying, if you shoot someone with the arrow of truth, you'd better make sure that it's dipped in honey.
Mm. Wishing you the best with that. I hope that applying some techniques allows them to be grounded enough to allow for that connection.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if that doesn't work, there's a lot of good Pencak Silat teachers in Bogor. Bring one of them in to teach them how to move.
Oh, really? Yeah. May you connect us?
Inshallah, I could do that actually.
Yeah.
One of the schools that I attended is in Bogor. Persatuan Gerak Badan Bangau Putih.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Bangau Putih.
Yep.
Yeah.
Had a lot of fun with them. Even though they're more Kuntao than Silat, but still.
I see. I look for them.
Yeah. Who else have we not heard from who might like to?
Dianat?
He's still
Not
with
sure if
us,
he's
so
around. Yeah.
that's always a good sign.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's
Hi.
morning here, so I have to send kids breakfast and all, so I'm just done with that.
No worries.
And I was listening on the side to the story. Yeah, really inspired. And yeah, the thought of that the actuality is beyond words, and different traditions try to talk about the same actuality by creating a reality, culture, methods, processes. And if one can connect with the non-verbal beyond the words, with the culture and tradition, one can always land at the same place. So it is indescribable. Yeah, so it was fascinating to really hear the exchange. But my thought was, okay, what's really beyond the words of the exchange?
And
Thank
that is
you.
the $64,000 question.
Yeah.
Something else that occurred to me was that when one man asked the other man a question, and instead of being given the 100% story, he's given a little bit of information and he has to go and discover it for himself. And I think that that's an important thing too, that you don't learn by getting the full picture. You've got to discover it for yourself.
Yeah. And that's actually within our tradition, that's one of the things that we do. Maybe we got them from this Chinese guy. I don't know, but it's here's an idea. Come back tomorrow and tell me what you think it means. Not tell me right now.
Chew
So,
on it.
yeah, chew on it. Take some time. Think about it. Come back next week and tell me what it means.
It's like you get the question like, am I supposed to feel it over here? Am I supposed to feel it in my neck? Is this the right place? And I go, I don't know. I'm not in your body. What? What? You didn't tell me. I go, no, I'm not telling. I said, you have to figure it out. And I said, this is the same thing that we're learning today. Sometimes you get just enough to whet your appetite, and then you have to go and do something about it. And I really like that.
Thanks, Shri. Huh. Do you have any thoughts, Mushtaq? Do you want to share before we part ways this evening?
No, I think I've said everything that we needed to say.
Yeah, I mean, this topic excites me, but I think we have
We
been a
have
big
dinner
chunk.
calling us.
And I'm hungry, yes.
Let's be
I'm
honest.
hungry for food, not so much knowledge. I'm good on knowledge today now. All right then, Brady Bunch mode.
All right. Brady Bunch mode.
Yay.
Here we go. All these smiling faces.
You're still awake. It's good. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Hopefully this was, a really interesting day of talking about ideas from quite a vast region with so much to share and so many threads that we could pull on. We can only pull on a few, unfortunately, but that leaves more for the future, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So more to come, more weirdness in our futures. Because as the man said, it still ain't got weird enough for me.
So, thanks to you all for being here and those watching on YouTube. But we can wave to each other, wave to everyone hanging out behind the screen, and we will see you next week, God willing. Bye, everybody.
Bye.